Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zach Hinkle. I'm going to talk about AppFoundry and premium apps. By a show of hands, who here is a vendor or has an application they're looking to actually build? All right. Shut up. All right. Is anybody an existing vendor of AppFoundry? Shut up. No? Okay. Well, I can save you a little bit of time. If you're not looking to actually monetize an app on AppFoundry, this may not be the session for you. Having said that, come on in. Alright, so my name is Zach Hinkle. I'm the product manager within PureCloud. I focus mainly on the AppFoundry and a lot of the features that we use to create apps that go into AppFoundry. So I'm going to give an overview of what are premium apps that are available inside of, or at least premium client applications that we sell today in PureCloud. Go over what they are and some of the updates and things you need to know whenever you go down the route of being a premium app, and some of the new things that we're adding. Alright, let's go through this work. Alright, so yeah, we'll go over premium applications, do a quick review of what they are, some of the updates that are coming. We're going to go into AppFoundry. Mainly, we're going to cover mostly the free trial aspects of AppFoundry. You may have heard Peter Graff talk about free trials and their availability. They are actually available today, but they are available via a sales-assisted process. So we're going to actually talk about the automation aspects, and we're going to try to make this guy right here in the front really nervous. So premium applications. So premium client applications, at least for PureCloud, there's two main things that we sell on top of AppFoundry, at least in the PureCloud realm. One's called a client application. The other one's called an embeddable framework. We're going to cover client applications, but if you have questions about the embeddable framework applications, the embeddable framework apps, we have two members in the audience here who can answer any of those questions. A premium application within PureCloud is essentially your application or your web app iframed effectively inside of PureCloud. We're going to go over some of the finer details of what that looks like, especially when it comes to monetization and how do you actually get paid for your application if it's riding inside of PureCloud. First and foremost, it starts with an application, your application. Second of all, we make available to you an extensive set of developer tools to integrate your application with PureCloud. So if you're not an AppFoundry vendor and you'd like to be an AppFoundry vendor, we will actually supply you your own PureCloud org free of charge, and you get access to our development tools at that point. We're very proud of our developer center. We have tools such as our API Explorer that lets you make API calls from in browser without having to do something like use Postman. You can actually run JavaScript inside of the code editor. You can actually lob in test interactions, and we have some pretty nice query tools for querying our analytics. So premium applications are first-class citizens inside of PureCloud. And what we mean by that is they are gated by permissions, PureCloud permissions. So when you look to build a premium application, one of the things that we will be providing to you is something called a PureCloud product. If the product is not available on the subscription, your app will not be available for that customer to implement. Once they have subscribed to your app, we add that product, and then it's available for installation. So when we say they are first-class citizens, we actually commit code into our repositories, essentially definition files, permissions, and licenses. They are PureCloud assets that are gating access and monetization of your application. Your application is still responsible for integrating with the PureCloud API, creating OAuth clients, and making API requests, as well as what functionality you're providing to the user. But we actually provide access control that, depending on how you monetize, link your application to our billing systems, and that's really why we call them premium applications. So if a customer purchases a premium app from AppFoundry, it is dynamically enabled in that org, but it also flows all the way through to our billing systems. So they can see usage of your application inside of the subscription tab. It shows up on the bill, and it can qualify for monthly commitments as well as month-to-month usage. Again, really premium applied mainly to the billing aspects. When we do create your application and we put that inside of PureCloud, you will see a branded installation card. So if you've ever been in the integrations menu inside of PureCloud and you see those apps that you can install like Amazon Lex, Poly, Google TTS, we have a host of free applications as well. But when you become premium, your application actually shows up inside of the PureCloud menu system. Premium apps are also discoverable inside of the AppFoundry, and they require a streamlined installation a streamlined installation script. We actually make an example app available for you that if you'd like, we can go ahead and I'd like to just show you what that looks like. So as I mentioned, premium applications are first-class citizens inside of PureCloud. To an end customer, it looks like, and it is essentially a part of PureCloud. So you can see a few of our more popular ones. Emite's quite popular. Help Social is popular. Mobile Systems. Actually, roughly half of these are actually premium applications. So these are things that are available to PureCloud customers on their Genesis subscription, and they will not show up here unless the customer has purchased those, and we'll go through that. I know we've been talking about what this is, but I'm going to go ahead and show it. So right now, the premium application, or at least this is the setup. Everything in here is set up by the definition file, so when you submit for a premium application, this is information that you're required to provide to us. And all the customer really has to do is to assign this permission to the users that need access to that app. If you're doing something with, let's say, data analytics, you may be charging on users, but they may not get access to the premium application, but you're still charging for them. So you might end up putting this permission on PureCloud users. So every single user that gets added to the system automatically gets access to your premium app, where you get access, they're licensed for your application. Once you click active, it activates inside of PureCloud and it is saved. We're going to go ahead and uninstall this one because I already have one running. And this is what, so we'll just clean it up real quick. But this is an installer that every premium application essentially needs to conform to. It doesn't actually have to go with this particular set of colors. But it does need to accomplish this functionality. First thing you'll notice here is the product available. So when your application bootstraps, you're running a OAuth client behind the scenes, either an implicit grant or a code authorization. And what that allows that client to do is to make some basic API calls to first check to see if this user has the permission and the product. If it does, just in case we do that, we require that check so people can't guess the URL. Tells you essentially what it's getting ready to do. If you'd like to read that, be my guest. But what it's doing now is making a series of API calls, and those API calls would be unique to whatever your application is doing, but it sets itself up. So if your app needs a client credential grant, which is essentially a server-to-server connection to PureCloud, you would be required to create the role and then create the client, programmatically grab the client ID and client secret to allow your application to run. This is just a sample integration. It doesn't do a whole lot, but if you do put interactions in, it'll just give you some basic information about those interactions. Anybody looking to build a premium application, this application comes standard with your AppFoundry developer org, already enabled. We also make this code available on our developer center page in the form of a GitHub page, which you can fork and start to modify. We've seen people turn their app into premium in a matter of 2 days. We've seen it go as long as a few weeks. It kind of depends on how much you are actually doing. So we'll jump back into the presentation. When you submit for your premium application, we have our requirements out on the developer center. So if you go to the developer page, there's actually a node called AppFoundry, and if you go to the overview page, we have links to all of our documentation on what your app needs to do, what it needs to do in terms of checking for permissions, and what we need from you to submit for the application. It takes us anywhere from about a week to 2 weeks to create a premium application. And the reason for that is, again, it is a first-class citizen inside of PureCloud, which means whenever I'm doing the pull requests, PureCloud development is actually reviewing those pull requests, approving them, and then we wait for code to promote. The main repo that needs to be updated is something called our registry. Our registry is what builds that integration page, and it usually promotes once a week. So depending on which cycle or where you hit us in our cycle, it can take a few days to go into production. When it does, it's available throughout PureCloud, all the regions. So what does a premium app look like, essentially quote to cash? So because it is what we call a premium application, one of the things that we do when we're onboarding you for a premium app is we create Genesis part numbers. I'm not going to go into all the pricing models or what that specifically looks like, but we work with you on that to determine how you're looking to monetize. But it all starts for a customer with a quote. Quote turns into an order. And one of the more common misconceptions is once a customer places an order, their subscription has been amended, and that is not always the case. An order does not always equal a subscription. A subscription is something that is tied to an org. One of the more common problems we see is reps are creating new subscriptions as opposed to amending an old one. Because these are first-class citizens, we automate the process of enablement of them. So if the subscription doesn't have an org enabled with it, or it doesn't have an org ID, we don't know where to turn it on. So that's one of the common problems we see. Once the subscription is properly done, product gets enabled, and then that app is ready for installation. During that installation, as I just showed, you do need, the customer has to assign the permission to whomever's getting it. That is ultimately the customer and partner responsibility, or the vendor. Ultimately, it's really the customer, but you as partners, if you're building an app, you need to be enforcing the permission inside of PureCloud. So PureCloud will automatically gate whether the app shows up, but not every user or every billable user of a premium app actually gets to see the app inside of PureCloud. So for instance, something like analytics or surveys, they might, you might automatically be sending out a survey on behalf of an agent, but the agent might not actually see the configuration screens. So they're so you're effectively licensing that user, but the user may not actually require the permission to be able to see the app because they don't get access to it. It's critically important that you do enforcement of the permission on your side as well. The reason I say that for license enforcement is because if users are not, if they don't have the permission or the permission isn't tied to the license, we will not be able to see if how much usage they really have. Premium apps are available, we make them available for customers to make commitments. So if someone commits to 100, but if they're only using 95, we bill for the greater of the commitment. If they use more than the commitment, at that point we would bill for overages. But we only bill for overages for what we can actually see. The difference between month-to-month subscriptions and annual subscriptions, whether they're pay up front in an annual commitment or an annual subscription that they pay on a monthly basis, those have commitments. So regardless of whether or not they're doing any usage, they will be charged for the minimum, or they will be charged for the greater of the minimum or an overage. So if they've committed to 100, they use 105, they get billed for 5 additional users on top of the 100. And they get actually billed at an overage rate. So if licenses are not being enforced inside of your application, you're effectively giving away software at that point. Month-to-month subscriptions have no commitment. So it's we only bill on the actuals. Again, license enforcement is very, very important. During ramp, one of the more common things that happen is customers buy PureCloud, but they're not ready to implement for 30 days, 60 days, depending on the customer, it could be longer. While in ramp, we only bill for actuals. So it's almost like a month-to-month subscription. So it's critically important that you're enforcing that license. And then we tabulate usage of your PureCloud premium app based on the presence of those licenses. So whatever their usage is, that's what we bill, and that's what you'll be paid on. The revenue split on a premium app is 70-30, 70 to you, 30 to us. And we handle billing, collections, all that good stuff. We have a new type of premium app, a premium client app. It's called a metering option. So I was just talking about how PureCloud tracks licenses, but there are plenty of apps that we have seen that a licensing model doesn't always make the most sense. So a premium meter application is when usage is calculated on your side and you send that to us on a monthly basis, on a daily basis. And we handle doing all the math. So if you're selling based on API hits, minutes, even if you're selling on licenses but you're doing the license tracking on your side, you would send us usage on a daily basis. And the documentation for this is now up on the Developer Center. It's under our coming soon banner, but if you go to AppFoundry, you'll see a list of articles, and one of them there is metering. It's got a lot more details about what it looks like. One of the more important things is, yes, metering apps still qualify for commitment. So if you're selling 1,000 minutes, 10,000 minutes, whatever it is, commitments still work the exact same. If they use more than the commitment, we will bill them for the overages. If they use less, we'll bill them for the minimum. Vendors will be supplying us usage with a HTTP post or an HTTPS post to an endpoint that will look something like this. One thing you'll hopefully notice is that is not a PureCloud API. It's not part of the public API. It is a PureCloud API, so it's not part of the public API. The reason for that is it allows us to have a generic single host endpoint where you can send us all of your customers' data without having to post to individual customer orgs. Instead, you can send us a single post, supply us the org ID, you will have a unique vendor ID and an app ID per app. And then you just submit to us daily usage. If it is a true metering app, let's say minutes, just send us the daily minutes. We'll do all the tabulation based on the customer subscription. So let's say they buy 10,000 minutes of something. Every day, let's say they use 500 minutes. Just send us the daily 500. We'll keep track of what that customer's unique monthly subscription date is. So every person in here might have a different one. Just send us the daily usage. We'll handle all the tabulation and billing for that. You just need to send us the actual usage. And these will be available in the July timeframe. Might slip a little bit based on something that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, but we still feel decent about this timeline. So transitioning, does anybody have an app today that they need to transition? All right, no, we won't cover that. So next up, we're going to talk about OAuth scopes. This is something, who here is familiar with scopes? Particularly, yeah, I know you are for sure. I know he is. He hates them with a passion. So what scopes are is a way to limit an application's access to a customer's data. So if anybody's ever downloaded an app, whether through Google Play or the App Store, it says, would you like to create an account, or you can authenticate using Facebook. One of the first things that happens after they take you to Facebook, you get prompted with a little thing saying, hey, this app wants access to this type of data. And it requires the user to consent to giving that data up or not. OAuth scopes with PureCloud will work very similarly. However, the big difference is the consumer provides access to a scope for all the users within the org. So individual users don't accept those scopes. So if you have an existing app today, which I know Jeff Hu does, don't update that client. Don't touch it, don't look at it, don't do anything with it. If you do, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Because we will require you, because your developer orgs have been enabled for scopes, which means if you update a client, it's going to require a scope. And when you update that client, every single one of your customers is going to be prompted to essentially accept the scope, and they're not enabled for it. You're in a world of hurt. The good news is existing clients are grandfathered in, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But please start getting your apps ready for this. It is coming. We don't have an exact release timeline for this. There's some other work that we need to have done before we can take this fully GA. But please start using it. We also have a pretty cool tool called the inspector, and that will actually tell you if you run that tool on your OAuth client. Your OAuth client will, the inspector tool will tell you what permissions you're using and what scopes you're using or would be required to use. So it's a pretty handy little thing. So some of the key things that you need to make sure you're prepared for is what happens when a customer doesn't give you access to all scopes. And how do you handle that? Can your app support it? Or are you going to tell them, hey, we really need all this. The app's not going to function until we get all the scopes. Make sure you're thinking about what happens if you need to add a scope in the future. Because any additional scope is going to require the customer to commit or authorize that scope. This is what happens whenever a customer has not provided or has not authorized your client for scopes. You will get forbidden, 403. So what do they mean? Moving forward, if you haven't started developing a premium app, whenever we provide you with a developer org, or if you have one today, we can enable scopes, so you can build your app automatically or already handling scopes. If you have, in terms of roadmap, I don't have a release timeline, but I'm hoping to get it out yet this year, is we are intending to deliver something called a global client. So today you need a client per region, and depending on the type, those are available throughout the entire PureCloud organization, the entire PureCloud region. So in implicit grants and code authorization grants, Those you create once, and you can reuse them with any one of your customers, but client credential grants are unique per customer. The idea here is to create a new type of client that follow those same guidelines, but you will only need one, and that will work in all PureCloud regions. Those will only be available to vendors. So next I'm going to talk about a new feature called interactions. The developer is right here. This is Justin Ray. This is something we've been talking about for a while. Today, premium applications exist either in the apps menu, so that full screen, or over here in what we call the widget panel. In both cases, whenever you go to them, they take your focus away from an interaction. What these do is allow you to run more inline with an interaction, and they're contextually specific to the interaction you're on. You wouldn't want to see a CRM record for this customer when you click over here. So whenever you click in between interactions, the context of the app switches. It also has some cool functionality that Justin's showing off here with the SDK, where he's sending toast, and he's also focusing the attention of the app with a little splat up there, kind of like you would see with text messages. There you go, little dot showing up, and the apps are expandable as well. They still function the same way any other client application functions in terms of if your app requires authentication, you'll need to handle that through an OAuth client. Justin and I are going to be meeting in the next couple of weeks to talk about what these will look like in terms of definition file-wise as to how they get implicated. So what we're trying to do and what we will be accomplishing is presenting the right app, if there are potentially more, or the right screen, let's say, in an app, based on something that's available on that interaction when it loads. So let's say there's the presence of some bit of metadata or something like that, and based on the presence of that data, you would show one thing versus another. So we'll have some simple rules that you can follow, and potentially something a little bit more complex. So we'll have a generic type of this. So today, if you don't have a premium application, but you're doing something inside of PureCloud and just want your homegrown app, we have a generic type called the custom client, where you can provide all the definition information through the configuration screen. So we'll have a generic type of this. So if you have an idea for a customer or your own org, you'll still have access to this functionality. But we'll also have a premium version, something that's gated by a permission. That permission may be linked to a license. And as far as monetization, we will have fixed options, so meaning like maybe it's $100 all you can use. So essentially you're paying for the buffet. We'll have a licensing model. So if the user isn't licensed, they don't get access to the app. And we'll also have a metered option with that. Those are all things that get linked inside of the billing system. But a premium will be gated by a permission, where the generic type will be gated by a group. Along with this work, we're also going to be updating our SDK, the client's SDK, which with what we have today, you get some basic command and control functionality between an app, so that's the same toast, that's the app, and then PureCloud that essentially allow you to pass messaging or potentially subscribe to messaging that is available within PureCloud. One of the things that we're looking to do is add agent-level interaction details, so you can potentially deep link, so you can jump from an app into someplace in PureCloud, or you could do autofill, so you could potentially send something that's happening inside of that app, you could send it to a chat. So you'll have some interaction between PureCloud and your app. And we're also looking for requests. We have, Justin has an intern this summer, and some additional help, and we're actually interested in feedback. So if you have an idea for things you'd like to see in that SDK, come see me or Justin after the session. We'd love to talk to you about your ideas. So we're going to talk about AppFoundry, specifically free trials, and they are coming soon. So what's a free trial? A free trial today is available through a sales-assisted process, meaning you have to talk to a sales rep. Depending on the cost of that app, so for instance, our most popular app is around $120 a month. Not too many sales guys get out of bed for $120 on a monthly basis. So what we're trying to do is drive the cost of acquisition for that to zero and not require a sales rep. We strongly feel by removing the friction between a customer and an app is absolutely the best thing we can do. It doesn't mean the Genesis sales rep or the partner sales rep doesn't get comped on that. They still do. We don't change anything about that. We just remove them from that process. We think it'd be a really cool idea. So for instance, Stephen down at the Australia, New Zealand G-Summits, how cool would it be if a customer came up to the booth, said, I'm really interested in eMite, and we say, well, we can show you a demo, or why don't we just enable it inside of your org right now, and we can show you what it does with your data. Totally different experience. And we think it's going to drive adoption moving forward. So what it looks like is here. The customer just has to agree to the terms and the trial. They click that, it'll deep link them right into PureCloud and ready for the installation. There's some UI tweaks that we're going to add to this. For instance, installation instructions. This is particularly very important with our embeddable framework, meaning we don't want to allow someone to start a trial of a CRM web client if they haven't done the CRM work. It would be awful if somebody really wanted to try a CRM web client. They commit to the trial, and then their IT department takes 3 weeks to enable the app inside of the CRM. Now they're down to just a week left for that trial. So we'll more than likely gate access to those by, at a minimum, prompting them, hey, you need to go do this work inside of your CRM. Here's the instructions on how to do that. Once you've completed that, come back and complete that free trial. We want customers to get the most out of those. First and foremost, we are trying to drive adoption of your app and PureCloud as a platform. And the best way we do that is by making sure that they can be successful with that free trial. Free trials are by no means required, but they are available to you as a premium app vendor. So one big caveat when we launch, these will only be available for direct customers only. So if the customer has a reseller, they will not be eligible. And we're going to talk about why, and it's mainly for the reseller's benefit, and we'll go into that. These are vendor opt-in only. If you don't think whatever your app is, whether a customer can understand the value or get up to speed quickly in a self-installation process, maybe a free trial is not the best idea for you. You do not want a customer downloading your app, or not downloading, but enabling your app, getting a trial, not understanding what's going on or what to do, and then they cancel it. Well, maybe it solves all their problems, they just don't know how this thing solves their problems. So you'll have to think about that, whether or not you want to take advantage of this. If you would like to, it will be available to you. By default, the trial period will be a single month. That's what you get through the AppFoundry, if they come in through the AppFoundry. Longer trials are available, but they require you guys as vendors to approve those. So those will be sales assisted. So if a customer comes in and says, yeah, we think we love it, but we need longer, they can always talk with the sales rep, and if you approve it, they can have longer. But that's something you as vendors will have to approve. We're not going to do that. Pricing. One of the things, if you're familiar with how we list pricing in AppFoundry today, it's available for everyone to see. When we move to this model, pricing will be gated by them authenticating. And the reason why we do that is we will be pulling pricing directly out of Genesis Salesforce, which means if the customer is purchasing in pounds, we'll show pounds. If the customer is purchasing In euros, we'll show euros. If it's Aussie dollars, that's what we'll show. Free trials are going to be available for premium applications only. Shocker. These are based on things that we can auto-enable and automatically handle within our subscription system. Installation instructions, we haven't worked out exactly what those are going to look like. More than likely for client applications, it will be you as vendors telling us, please assign a permission to this role or have them create a custom role. All those things are available inside the premium application very easily, but we want to make sure you set the customer up for success on how to do this, and we want customers to be able to do this themselves. Another one, this is particularly important to anybody who is an existing vendor today. We send out win and loss reports, but win and loss reports are based on orders, not subscriptions. So we see that time and time again, where an order is completed, let's say it's completed Friday, we send out a win-loss report on Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember when we send it out. And then, so you contact the customer, and, hey customer, see purchased E-Mite, let's get going, and then the app isn't there, because the subscription hasn't been amended. One of the things that we do with this method is we do automation. So the subscription is amended properly because it's automated and it's not in a sales rep's hands. But when we do that, we will notify you as vendors, hey, this customer has opted into a free trial, their subscription is amended. We will do this regardless of how they purchase those. So if it's sales assisted, you'll still get this notification. But it'll be based on actual billable events, not just orders. So what happens on the customer subscription? Whenever they do this, they're opting into a month-to-month subscription, effectively. Whatever, if they're an annual prepay, or if they are an annual month-to-month customer, what we're doing is creating a zero commitment subscription, which is kind of like a month-to-month, which means they're not committed, which means we're only going to bill them for actual usage, which also means they're opting into the worst price that we have. So let's say the committed price is $10, the non-committed price, or aka the overage price, is $12, as an example. What they're opting in is to that $12 price. And that'll be shown inside of the menu. This is what you're opting into. If they want a better price, they can commit, and they can do that through the Genesis sales rep. But what that means is they can also cancel at any time. They can cancel any time during the free trial period, and they can cancel any time after that. So it's up to you to show value to get them to commit to a proper subscription. If they sign up outside of the monthly anniversary, the second month, so let's say their anniversary is on the 15th of the month, but they sign up for a trial on the 20th, that second month, they'll still get that month, a full month, but we'll prorate the usage in the second month, or prorate the actual usage in that second month to get them synced up with the billing cycle, and that's automatic. Indirect customers. So indirect customers will not be able to sign up for a trial inside of AppFoundry initially. They still can get a free trial. They'll still go through the sales assisted process. However, that should be simpler because of some of the additional fields we've added in the Salesforce. So today, whenever somebody wants to do a free trial, effectively what you have to do is calculate a credit, put a credit on their subscription, and then usage over the credit would get billed. It's a giant pain in the butt, and almost nobody can do it right. So ideally, we'd like to, indirect customers will eventually get this capability. But what it means for resellers is resellers are going to have to complete a profile inside of AppFoundry, letting us know what your whitelist is. So these are apps that you are adding margin and providing services on. So if you want 10% additional margin or something like that, you're a reseller and you will take first call support on this app. You might be charging for that as a service. So that app would be on your white list. Your gray list would be apps that are still available, because we understand that the subscription with a reseller is with the reseller and Genesis. So there's a variety of reasons like the reseller can't support adding as many apps to their price list or their quoting system as we can. We see that. You may not want to take or provide additional supports, and you still would like all support to go through the vendor of that app. That'll be up to the reseller. And then we also will allow resellers to blacklist apps. So for instance, if the reseller has a competitive offering with others, you may choose not to allow customers to opt into a free trial on AppFoundry itself. That does not mean the customer cannot go out and buy that app directly from the vendor. It's just you're not offering it on your subscription, so they can create an outside subscription. So the customer still has the choice for that app. It just wouldn't be bought through that reseller. We can't force a reseller to sell something they don't want to sell. But what we want to do is create options for resellers to add additional services, or still allow a customer to purchase it, just have support to go through that actual vendor. So one of the other things that we're going to be doing on AppFoundry, and how am I doing on time? Anybody know? 15 minutes? Okay. So I also want to take this opportunity to talk about something that we're going to be doing in the second half of the year, something that we're calling solutions that will go on AppFoundry. Solutions could be things like bots. So, for instance, a bot using Dialog Engine, which is a new service that's coming out, I think in Q3, is the ability to run chatbots. Well, a chatbot, for the most part, at least starts as a simple definition file. You have a bunch of utterances, you have a bunch of attempts, and then you have slots. Well, effectively, that's just a JSON data object that could be reusable. So I anticipate resellers releasing free bots, putting them out on AppFoundry, because it's a great way to give someone something for free and then sign them up for service. Or, okay, well, here's a bot that answers these basic questions, but you're still going to need to hook it up to your CRM. You still need to hook it up to some sort of data store to make it actually functional, but it's a great place to start. The same would be true for data actions. So we've got Richard Schottman here, who is the product manager of the data actions. We have a few, what we would call premium tier or first tier data actions with things like Salesforce and Zendesk and Microsoft, maybe. However, we realized there's a million different things you might want to connect PureCloud.org up to make REST API calls for data dips, for things in IVRs, potentially things from a bot, and we want to make those available. However, they will not be premium, they'll just be configuration files that we can automatically deploy on AppFoundry for you. We think resellers are going to love data actions bots as well as IVR flows. Giving away free assets, essentially best practices for IVRs, so let's say a payment flow or something like that, some sort of account servicing. Give away the flow and then sell the service for customizing it afterwards. We think that'll be a great way resellers can expand their service empire. And then collections. So a lot of these things are not going to exist as single assets. Now, collections will be something that will more than likely come later, but I could absolutely see an IVR flow with some custom data actions and potentially having a bot run into that first. So you'd have multiple assets, and we would like to, or what we will do is allow a collection of those to be installed at the same time. I want to give you an idea of what that'll start to look like on AppFoundry. So that's AppFoundry. Let's say eMight was offering a bot. I don't know if you're getting in the market, but let's say you were, Stephen. Instead of a free trial or instead of a contact us button, we'll provide the ability to test that bot. So what that would look like is essentially we'll pop a chat window and potentially put up some sort of text like, you can ask this bot these types of questions. Have at them. And the customer could go ahead and interact with that bot right here. But we also flip that button to install. If you want that bot, authenticate, and then we would essentially deploy that bot inside of your PureCloud org. One of the things that I found really amazing attending a few customer conferences last year is how many people know that they need to do things with AI, but they don't know where to start. It's scary. It's kind of like, where do I start? Do I start here? Do I start there? Which process do I do? What are industry best practices? How do I get started? So what we'd like to do is demystify that. We need to make champions out of the people who are willing to try. And how do we do that? We make it really, really easy, and we give them good places to start. We think the same is true for data actions, IVR flows. Of course, customers are going to have to customize them to their needs, but these are great starting places. There are also revenue opportunities for our reselling community for services. Let us help you get this bot working for you. The framework is there. Any questions? Yeah.
So just from a customer perspective, how do you balance off the ease of getting started with maybe sometimes organizations being having questions about some of the terms and conditions and guarantees around like access to our data or GDPR compliance?
Sure. So some of the stuff I don't have on in this deck that I presented on the partner day is vendors can actually self-provide attestations on AppFoundry. So if they have GDPR, they have PCI, I think there's 3 or 4 other ones, they can report that on AppFoundry, so you can see that. Terms and conditions, they will actually have to accept terms and conditions for the vendor's app. And we will actually post that to our Salesforce, so it'll be on the subscription. This is the language you've accepted. Here's a link to the terms and conditions that you accepted of the vendors whenever you install this.
Can you imagine that being a challenge for some organizations?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there are certain customers that are never going to follow this and that are going to go through a typical sales-assisted process. I don't see a scenario where that goes away. But we also have a lot of customers in the 25 to 150 seat range that level of rigmarole isn't really adding any value. I just want to try it. What we're trying to do is remove friction or provide an option of as frictionless of an experience as we can provide. If you don't want to use it, that's fine. But what we are trying to do is drive platform adoption and make that easy. I think it's crazy that it can take 2 weeks for someone to buy something for $100. That's just, it's nuts. The rep isn't going to make any money on that. He doesn't want to get out of bed. She doesn't want to get out of bed for that. And if they do it wrong, then they have to go fix that, and that's one of the more common things. You could ask Steven right here. Order errors are pretty common. There's no reason that can't be automated, so that's what we have done. It's taken significantly longer than I would have liked to get to this place, but if you like automation, you can do that. If you don't, contact your sales rep. The same experience in terms of self-deployment is still there. But you can go and do a DocuSign process and talk to people if you'd like.
One additional thing to add to that is the AppFoundry free trials is gated by a permission.
Correct.
So if the admin does not want free trials to happen, they just don't hand out that permission to supervisors or whoever.
Correct, yeah.
It will just say a content.
You're effectively modifying that subscription. So not everybody's going to get that permission. It's actually a new one. Or it's one that exists today, but we don't really use it?
It is a currently existing one around the billing.
Yeah.
So we have a subscription around who can see and view, so who can view and edit the bill, but there was no edits. Now we are having the edit. That one, so it was already there. It was just not being used in the official manner.
Yeah.
So it'll be updated behind that one. So whoever has the ability to view and edit,
They can also cancel an app as well.
Yes.
So as easy as they can get into a free trial, they can also get out. Any other questions? So, do you have any questions?
So, regarding this interruptions, would you allow to run more than two in parallel in one interruption?
Yeah, you will be able to.
Which can somehow be intelligent, right?
It will more than likely be user click. Now, this is a discussion that Justin and I have been having. We actually, he had it with another vendor, whether or not how developer-centric those will be when we release, meaning whether or not it's run as essentially a headless app that gives you programmatic control over a lot of that, or it's more of a if-then, then that type of approach. So we haven't settled on it. Our number one goal is adoption. We want people to use this. And we don't want to scare anybody, but we also don't want to chop anybody's legs off who's going to do something cool. We like cool, but we also really like adoption. Yeah, this is Justin, by the way.
Hey, yeah, effectively what you'll be building is a provider which says which apps are applicable for the interaction that's been loaded, right? So you'll get the conversation ID, and then you can make decisions based on that. You have to authenticate and go get the information about the conversation. Can I provide or add value to this? And then if so, then yes, I'll provide these apps. Yes, you can have multiple. You have to figure out how many that is because they're iframes and they do add weight to the page, right? And they're used across. And an agent can have multiple interactions at one time, right? So we have to figure out the right balance for that. But that's kind of the idea. And auto selection we haven't really considered. Probably keep it a user level, an agent level for the first rollout. Let them manually click on it, see how much they switch between tabs, and then see if we add automation there. You will have access, like Zach's shown with the SDK, so you can request attention for your app, right? To say just flat out say I have information for you. We don't expect to have 100 tabs
No.
apps, so I suspect if it's
Overflow gets to be a pain in the ass.
right, and if it's a targeted install, we're assuming that your contact center wanted your app and wants to use it, right? So I don't expect a lot of competition for that space.
This may be too specific and maybe more for them, but do you envision having a capability where if an app is tied to an interaction, that the app has the ability to kind of veto the dismissal of the interaction for certain criteria are met? Mandatory field must be filled in or something like that?
I wouldn't think for MVP. We want to hear your suggestions, so let me have it all. The wrap-up functionality is built heavily into our conversation model, so I don't know if you could deal with that. But what you will be able to do is subscribe. You'll be able to subscribe to changes on the conversation as well. So as an interactive, you will know if that is in wrap-up, right? And you could request attention if you would let something be wrapped up. Or if you would like to do something before they close the interaction. That helps. But yeah, let me have whatever. If bells are going off, let me know, and I'll keep a list of things. And add it.
We'd really like to have used the intern for the summer. So in terms of calls to action, if you have questions about getting started or more detailed questions, contact us, the AppFoundry team. There's a getting started link on AppFoundry that'll reach out to the team. Make sure you keep attending DevCon sessions. We were very prescriptive about having developers do the majority of these sessions. A lot of them are in the rooms. If you have questions, make sure you're attending those and meeting those. And let's start developing. We're really curious to see what you guys have in mind and what you can do with our platform. We've been really amazed and really delighted with how far some of our vendors have taken them and the amount of adoption that we see out of our vendors. We think removing friction for customers to just try an app, we think that's going to, we haven't made any projections, but we think that's going to drive adoption. Having to talk to a sales rep in 2 to 3 weeks to get a trial going is just too much. We'd like to put that power in customers' hands, and then you as vendors have an opportunity to follow up with those customers to show them the value. Nothing else? I think I'm probably over. Thanks.